This is Wildcat Country.
It's only right. The ball's in his hands. A milestone victory for Arizona. Simon says championship.
All the inside scoop on U of A athletics.
It's up for the end zone. Arizona has scored the touchdown. Wildcats win.
Let's go to work, brother.
Welcome to an action-packed edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. Football season is almost upon us. We're a week and a half away. I am so excited. I know we're all so excited, and there is a bunch of news to talk about today, and we're very excited to have on shortly our buddy Jeff Dean, who is the voice of the Wildcats, Arizona Stadium and McHale Center. Shane, among the topics we're going to discuss with Jeff, obviously the football schedule. We're going to break that down. How many wins are the Wildcats going to have this year? The new basketball assistant coach, Steve Robinson, we'll talk about him. The Pac-12 baseball tournament at Scottsdale Stadium. But the number one topic that I want to ask you about before we bring Jeff on, Jedd Fisch announced on Tuesday that Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer will both play against BYU in Las Vegas next Saturday. You tweeted out, Shane, an old quote, I believe it was from John Madden, that said something like, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. So what are your real thoughts on what Jedd Fisch decided?
Well, it was actually Wilton Spate, who we had on the show a few months back, who was the Jedd Fisch was Wilton's quarterbacks coach at Michigan, who coined that while he was talking with us. So that's the first thing I thought of. I know everyone likes to point out, Keith Smith and Ortiz Jenkins and how that all worked out pretty well for Arizona. But yeah, I tend to agree with Wilton. I certainly wouldn't put Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer at the level of Smith and Jenkins at this point. With that said, I don't think this is intended to be a permanent situation. I think this is a case of the Arizona coaching staff wanting to see what they have in both guys in a real in-game setting. It's unfortunate, really, that Arizona, of all seasons, doesn't have an FCS opponent to beat up as sort of a preseason game at the beginning of the season to kind of get a feel for who the best quarterback is in the situation, but it is what it is. My other big takeaway, Eric, is the guy who I think both of us thought was going to be the starter this season, at least as of a couple months ago, Jordan McLeod, is presumably now number 3 on the Wildcats depth chart. So whether it was a combination of poor showings in practice, not being available for spring practice or other things, it's disappointing, not only for us, but I'm sure for Jedd Fisch and his staff, and I'm sure Jeff has some thoughts on that. But long story short, for me, I don't think this is going to be a long-term situation, this 2-quarterback thing. I certainly hope it's not. I don't think it's going to last more than 1 week.
Well, let's bring him in without further ado. Jeff Dean, the voice of the Wildcats at Arizona Stadium and McHale Center, and he is also the host of the Jeff Dean Show Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. on ESPN 1490 Tucson. Jeff, always great to have you on. I, for one, am not a fan of the 2-quarterback solution. I think it is a disaster waiting to happen. This should be Gunnar Cruz's job. Do you agree with Jedd Fisch, or do you agree with Shane and I?
I don't think it's a disaster waiting to happen per se. This is a situation where Jedd Fisch, he's got to be making some very difficult decisions through his time at Arizona as a head coach, and this is going to be his very first time walking the sidelines as a head coach. And when you have 2 quarterbacks that neither one of them essentially rose to the top throughout the competition in practice, you're going to have to find another way to urge them to greatness, essentially. I don't disagree with the move. If it's going to be a season-long thing, then obviously we're in big trouble. I don't think anybody would think differently of that. But I think for the first game, I don't think it's all that bad. And I know that a lot of people have said that they wish that Arizona were playing NAU or something, like an easier team to start off the season with. And I kind of feel like the opposite of that. I think it's great that they're going to be playing a team that's ranked in the top 25 because you have to go out there with your full game plan to try to win a game against a ranked team. And those quarterbacks are going to have to show up first, day one, first reps out there with live bullets, and they're going to have the full playbook at their disposal. And whoever runs that playbook the best, whoever runs the offense the best, and, you never know. Against a ranked team, certainly the emotions are going to be high, and you're going to find a very capable quarterback. I believe you're going to find a capable quarterback somewhere in that mix. I don't believe that it's going to be a 2-quarterback system beyond the BYU game. And I feel like if they had played NAU first, that it would have been a situation like that, where they wouldn't be opening up the playbook against, an FCS school. They'd be a lot more vanilla. able to run the football and win the game kind of thing. So I like the fact that they're playing NAU or BYU first. And I don't mind the 2 quarterback system for 1, maybe 2 games, but one of these guys has better show up and take control of this team.
So, Jeff, I know you had a chance to go down to practice. You were the PA guy for the scrimmage last week. Give us some of your overall thoughts about fall practice, and are there any people in particular who really impressed you during the opportunity that you had to actually take some of it in person?
Well, I feel like the left side of the offensive line has played extremely well. I know that Jalen Harris has wreaked some havoc in the backfield, and Jalen had a great camp. And we expect that out of Jalen. Don Brown is a master at putting guys in positions to make plays and let them do what they're best at. And Jalen Harris is going to have that opportunity this year. I think he's going to be a nightmare on offenses. I do think that the left side of the offensive line played extremely well in camp, so I'm looking forward to that. I like the way the left side played. I also we've been waiting for this guy to kind of find his way into the position, and I'm talking about Tavian Cunningham, because you've seen just the straight line speed that he has, that sprinter speed. And as a lot of times you see the case with guys who are splitting football time with track time, that they don't have that time to do 7-on-7s because they're competing in track and field events during the time when those 7-on-7s are going on. So they don't get to learn the position of wide receiver as quickly and pick it up as quickly as others do. Tavian Cunningham, who's been now a wide receiver for 3 years, and has been learning that position and playing more 7-on-7s and trying to hone his craft, has now become a very capable route running wide receiver. And you couple that with his ridiculous speed, he's the fastest player on the team. I think he's gonna cause some problems for some defenses over the top this year. And then another guy who is really a surprise, and it's not a position that I'm familiar with all that well. I mean, I know how the linebacker position is played. But it's not a position that I didn't play on the defensive side of the ball. I played on the offensive side of the ball. So it's difficult for me to pick out when a linebacker is doing what he's supposed to be doing, essentially. But I'm going to go off of the recommendation of the coaches, the players who speak so highly of this guy, and that's Rashi Hodge, just a freshman that came in and has really been – he's one of those guys that when people say his name to the coaching staff or to the players, they get a big smile on their face. And, he's got nicknames and stuff, and he's a guy who's a real glue guy on this team, and he may emerge as one of those emotional / kind of vocal leaders for that defense throughout this season and during his time at Arizona. But he's been a real pleasant surprise. And then finally, the guy who I just can't stop, thinking about, essentially, because I never got to see him practice. I only got to see him play in that scrimmage game because he had been on a fishing boat in Spain trying to earn money for his family. But Mo Diallo can flat out play. I mean, he's got everything you want out of a defensive lineman. One of the things that I noticed about Mo is he strikes first. So when you're in the trenches, it's so important to get that first strike, because once you get first strike with your hands, then you can start to manipulate your opponent. You can start to use your leverage. He's got great first strike ability. He strikes first. He strikes hard. He's got quick feet. He knows how to use his hands, and he gets into positions where he can manipulate the offensive lineman. He's going to create a lot of double teams from opposing offensive lines. He can play 5 technique, 3 technique. They may move him to a 2 technique. I don't think he's 7 or outside edge rusher kind of guy, but man, what an addition to this team at the right time. A shot in the arm and a guy who can play all up and down that defensive line, and he's got it all. We're very, very, very blessed to have a guy like him.
What the enthusiasm at the stadium? I mean, Eric and I were there for the spring game, and there was great atmosphere, even though I know attendance was limited. It looked like a great atmosphere. Eric and I weren't there last week for the scrimmage, but it looked like the Zona Zoo had a lot of fans there. You were there as a PA guy. Jedd Fisch has obviously done a great job of rallying support for the team, which has been a tough job considering the skepticism surrounding his hire initially, the fact that the program has lost 12 games in a row. What's the level of enthusiasm maybe going into this season in versus previous years? Even though I know maybe throw out last year because last year was weird, but just going into an average season, what's the enthusiasm like down there from your perspective?
Well, first of all, seeing the entire student section filled with people was a treat. It was amazing because even in 2019, when fans were allowed to come to games, the student section was barren. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of people there, to be honest. And there was a legitimate 8,000 people there. The whole student section, it's the largest student section in the Pac-12. It holds about 8,500 people from sections 1 through section 7, and you have the band in section 8. That entire section, the entire student section, was pretty much full with students, fans, parents. And there were a lot of fans, casual fans that were there that weren't connected to the team or weren't connected to getting free Chick-fil-A from Jedd Fisch. And I thought there was a lot of enthusiasm in the student portion of the bleachers. Fisch was calling out at halftime. He's like, "Where's my freshmen at? Where are my sophomores?" There was a large freshman contingency there. That speaks good things about what could possibly happen. I mean, these are young kids that are getting their first shot at going to college, and this is the largest incoming freshman class in the history of Arizona. If you can get them locked in, get them to buy in, then you can have some really rabid fans there for games. And, having a big vocal student section is so big in college football. I know that ticket sales are still down and they're not where the athletic department would like them to be, but in my opinion, I think they're in a better position than where we expected them to be, and certainly in a better position if we hadn't had moved in the direction that we went in the off season.
Certainly agree with that. I want to ask you about this new tradition that Coach Fisch mentioned, this in between the third and fourth quarter. I guess he wants everyone to lock arms and sing the alma mater, and then some country song, "Happy Is as Happy Does," or something like that. Jeff, I honestly got Zona Sway flashbacks. So tell me why you think this is a good idea and this is gonna work for you, or for the whole stadium, I guess.
Well, I don't know if it's a good idea. That's the one thing about trying to start new traditions. Traditions are almost born; they're never created, kind of thing. I talked about this on my radio show. Fans at the football games used to shake their keys during the opening kickoffs, and that actually didn't start at Arizona football. That started at Arizona hockey decades ago. The fans were shaking keys at the hockey games, and it carried over into football, and they would do it during the kickoffs. Traditions that are forced upon people rarely take hold. And I said on my show, I think that Jedd Fisch has got a greater uphill battle trying to instill a new tradition than he will trying to win football games this year, because there's so much turnover in the bleachers on the fan side of the ball. Essentially, there's so much turnover there, and to be honest, fans are going to do whatever they want to do. And it's great that at Florida they sing the alma mater. And they've been doing it for 65 years, in the swamp, and there's 90,000 people. It's a different type of fan base there. I've been to games in the SEC. The fans are just different about the school. I mean, they feel differently about their school than fans here in the Southwest and on the West Coast. Fans on the West Coast are this is the Pac-12. They're here to get an education. I mean, let's call it like it is. They went to an institution of higher learning like Arizona to get an education. Football is a great plus, and being able to go check out the team. But this is not, a lot of times these are not students who are, born and bred to go to Arizona like they were in the Southeast and Florida and things like that. So I think it's going to be difficult. I don't mind it. Again, we're gonna roll it out there and see what happens. Jedd's very passionate about it. The song that he chose would not have been my first choice for a song to sing along to. I'm not a country music fan, so I'm probably not the right person to ask about this. But I looked, and not to start dropping names here, I know Kenny Chesney. I worked with Kenny Chesney back in the day from my times at the FM station here in Phoenix, and I've played catch with Kenny on the football field at Sun Devil Stadium before the George Strait Music Festival. Like I know Kenny Chesney. I have never heard this song before in my entire life, and I think that's part of the problem as well. When you do a sing along like they do at Fenway Park, Sweet Caroline, right? As much as everybody hates the song, everybody knows the damn song, right? Like it's a song that everybody recognizes, everybody's able to sing along to because they know the song. Jump Around, there is no singing along to it. You just jump up and down. You do something, it has to be a more, in my opinion, it would need to be a more recognizable song, but according to people that I talk to, they know the song and are familiar with it, so we'll see. Good luck.
And it has a line about Tucson in it, and I had heard the song for the first time on Twitter the other day. I'm with you, Jeff. I think you got to have if you're going to do a sing along, you got to have one that everybody knows. So that I think this is a mistake, but we'll find out. By the way, nobody else knows the words of the alma mater either. I mean, I've been going.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, hundreds of games. I could not tell you. I know it's called All Hail Arizona. I don't know any of the lyrics to it.
I think the band sings it at the end of each game. So I think the band knows it, but I think that's it.
But I'm trying to get home. For my 2-hour drive back up north here. So, yeah, I'm not sticking around for that. Nonetheless. All right, so, Jeff, we had you on last.
The good news is that they've got a karaoke display set up on the big screen, so you'll
thank goodness
to follow along with the song, with the lyrics to the alma mater.
Yeah, you don't want to hear me karaokeing either. That's not a good thing with me singing at any time. Last October, we had you on along with our friend Megan Coughlin to give season predictions. And, we were going game by game. This is going to be a little bit different, what I want to do with you and Shane here, because I want to break the season down into thirds, and I want to play a game called Find the Potential Wins amongst the four game stretches. And I want to start with the first one. Shane, I'm going to start with you here. BYU in Vegas, San Diego State. There you go. Yeah. BYU in Vegas, San Diego State at home, NAU at home, at Oregon. Shane, find me a win or two among that 4 games.
I'm going to give you exactly one, and it's the one that you think. I don't think that they're necessarily going to be competitive with any of those other teams. Maybe people might look at San Diego State. I just think they're too good defensively for Arizona to win that one, especially coming into their second game of the season where they're probably figuring out who their starting quarterback still is. The Aztecs were good on defense last year. They've got most of those starters coming back, even though they did lose a couple of guys up front. They allowed 75 rushing yards per game last season, which is a strength of Arizona's, but that number is second best in all FBS. So I don't think Arizona is going to generate enough points to stay competitive in that game. I don't think BYU or Oregon are wins. So I think you got the one FCS win, and that's it.
All right, Jeff, you are the most positive Arizona fan that I know, and obviously you work for the team, but tell me why there are going to be multiple wins among that 4-game stretch.
In the opening 4-game stretch,
yes.
I agree with Shane. NAU is the one game that you look at and you say that's the one game all year that we're going to be favored in, right? And even though NAU is actually they have a very good squad this year. It's going to be a good football team. They've put together a real legitimate squad. Even though they've been recruiting in the state of Arizona, apparently that's a real problem for some people recruiting Arizona high school players. But I digress. They could come out and they could shock a team like BYU, who is returning the fewest players of any team in the FBS this year. They lost a lot of their team to the draft and to graduation last season, a team that went 11-1. They're a very confident team, almost to the point of cocky, where there have been some quotes coming out of Provo that would lead you to believe that this team believes that they're already going to finish the season undefeated. So maybe a little over their skis a little bit before heading into the first game. They're going to be on a neutral site with an entirely new batch of players. Could be an interesting spot for them. And then, I joke about it, and I joked about it on my show when Tyrone McMillan made his verbal commitment to Oregon. I claimed that it wasn't over. Jedd Fisch wasn't just going to drop the rope and walk away, that the tug of war had not ended. And he's going to go and try to get a pull back when they go up to Eugene. Listen, crazier things have happened. I've seen teams completely fall apart that had high expectations that just don't quite have it. There are problems already in Eugene that I'm hearing about that people aren't exactly buying in. When I say people, I mean teammates aren't buying in to Anthony Brown as the quarterback there. People are kind of upset that he was handed the reins last year before the season even ended, before they even gave anybody else a chance, especially Tyler Shuck, who was named the starter at Texas Tech yesterday. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying if there's an upset on the schedule, and I mean a big-time upset, a monumental message sender, it's that game in Eugene. And I'm not saying they're going to win the game. I still think they come into that 4-game stretch 1-3. But BYU could be overconfident, starting a brand new set of players. That's a potential for a trip up. And Oregon, I think, has that. I don't think Oregon's even going to win the North. So I don't think they're as good as everybody's touting them to be. And there's already problems internally in Eugene as well.
All right. The one game you Shane didn't really touch on, you didn't touch on at all, is San Diego State. Now they have these really cool helmets that were just shown off on Twitter, and they're going to be among the best looking helmets in FBS all year. All right. So I'll just say that. But the team itself, I was not impressed offensively last year. If Arizona can get pressure on the get some pressure and some movement up on the defensive line, as you had mentioned earlier, Jeff, with Mo Diallo, making an impact there. I think the Wildcats can keep this game close into the fourth quarter, a low-scoring affair against San Diego State. First home game for Jedd Fisch. I think that one could be interesting, so I'm going to put the Aztecs on upset alert before we've seen Arizona play. Now, the next set of 4 games is interesting. You have home away, home away. You have UCLA at Colorado, home Washington on a Friday night, and then at USC. Now, normally I would say UCLA would be a pretty good bet to win, because I don't trust Chip Kelly. But when you look at UCLA's schedule leading up to the Arizona game, they play at Stanford, home against ASU, at Arizona, and at Washington. You have to find wins for them in that group, and that's why the UCLA game concerns me. I think, to me, the best chance of a team winning that game, or of Arizona winning a game, is at Colorado. Jeff, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's certainly the best opportunity for Arizona to get a win in that group of 4. Washington is a very, very good football team. They've had trouble playing in Tucson previously under different regimes. It just kind of seems to follow them for some reason. They have difficult times going from Seattle to Tucson. It's a long trip. I get it. They're a very talented team. I'm going to give them the nod in that game. And like you said, with the UCLA issue there with Chip Kelly, eventually he's going to get things figured out. They've got loads and loads of talent. They've got quite a few new assistant coaches that they're trying to work in there. But as you mentioned, they're going to be pretty well seasoned by the time they get to Arizona. So that's going to be a tough game for the Cats as well. So, yeah, you've got the Colorado game, the 2 road games, right? Colorado and USC. Got to go into the Coliseum, play a really, really talented, loaded USC team with a quarterback who's already being touted as a Heisman hopeful. So, yeah, you look at that 4, and I think at Colorado is the best chance for a win. I think in the preseason predictions, I think that Colorado was a 53% favorite, or essentially a 53% chance to win that football game, which is the second best for odds for Arizona to win a game this year.
All right, Shane. Jeff and I agree that Colorado is probably the best chance for a win, but it's on the road. Are you going to give the Wildcats a chance against UCLA, who, as you might remember, you and I were at the game a few years ago. Grant Gunnell had the surprise start, 20-17, I believe was the final score, where Arizona beat, I don't know if I'd call it an upset, over UCLA. Would you give the Wildcats the nods over the Bruins this time, or are you saying Colorado's our best shot in that group of 4?
Well, first of all, think about what you just said. You were trying to remember when that UCLA game was. You said a few years. That was Arizona's last home win.
It was the last win, period.
It was their last home. They went and beat Colorado on the road the week after.
It would be Colorado
the
following week. Yeah.
That's
that was
right.
Okay. That was their last home win. Was the one we went to. When was that? Yeah, it was that long ago. That tells you all you need to know about why Kevin Sumlin's not here anymore. But yeah, I sort of agree with you guys. I wish I didn't. I wish I had something kind of different and controversial to say. But yeah, I think Colorado sort of looks similar to Arizona in certain ways. You got a new quarterback coming in. They got some depth at running back and wide receiver. Arizona should have scored a lot more points against Colorado than they did last season. They scored 13. They found some creative ways to not get in the end zone in that game, if you remember. Even though that game is in Boulder, I could see Arizona finding a way to win that one. I'm not saying it really matters, but the Wildcats have done very well against Colorado historically. So I don't think Colorado is as good as its record suggested last season. I think if there's a road win in there, certainly it's that one. I agree with what you're saying, Jeff, about UCLA being battle tested, but I just don't buy them yet. I'm kind of at the point with Chip Kelly now. I'll believe it when I see it. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is about as average a Power 5 quarterback, and we got a chance to see him in that game, Eric, a couple of years ago. He's about as average of a Power 5 QB as there is out there. He missed some time in training camp for reasons unknown still. Like he missed 8 practices. Their offensive line is questionable. Should be better defensively, but I think much like the game we went to a couple of years ago, this could be kind of an ugly home game that the Wildcats pull out. I could see them winning. I don't know what's going on a limb, but I'll say they win at least one of those 2 games.
All right, and then I want to go to the final 4 games of the year. One of them I have circled, which is homecoming on November 6th against Cal. I think that is a very winnable game for Arizona. They follow it up with another home game, their final one of 2021 against Utah, before a Friday night game at Washington State. And if you haven't seen the Cougars' schedule at the end of the year, it's brutal. Arizona is their only home game in their last 4, and they play ridiculous road schedule. And then, of course, the game in Tempe. Now, we have Jeff Dean on. We know he's the most positive Wildcat fan that we all know. Jeff, where do the wins come from in this final quarter of or final third of games?
Well, Cal is going to be surprisingly good this year. I mean, their defense is going to be as good as it was last year. They've got seasoning at quarterback now, where they had to kind of jostle some guys around the last couple of years. They're going to come back with a more confident quarterback this year. Obviously, if they can stay healthy. I mean, health is always the key in football. They're going to be very good. I mean, homecoming is going to be certainly a driving force for the Wildcats football team. And I do think it's a winnable game for Arizona. They'll, depending on what happens when we get in there, it could be some words of a 1-point or a 2-point underdog situation for Arizona, which is basically just a toss-up at that point. Then you look at Utah. You mentioned them. I think they have the potential to be the best team in the entire Pac-12 this year, let alone the South. They're very good. They're extremely physical. Ever since they kind of got their grips into Arizona, Rich Rodriguez would beat them like a drum every year for the first few years, and then all of a sudden something changed, and we haven't won a game against them since. So it's going to be difficult to beat Utah, even if it is the final home game of the year. They're very, very good. Then the final 2 road games. You mentioned Washington State playing their only home game. It's going to be the only game that they're favored in those final 4 for Wazoo. The Palouse is a really difficult place to play. It's a long travel. It's probably going to be dreary and dark and cold. That's a very, very difficult win. And Wazoo is going to be, again, they'll be talented enough this year to win football games. And then the Teacup game in Tempe, you just throw records out the door. You kind of forget about who's the most talented team, who's the better team. It's just all about who's more motivated that day to win a football game and who makes fewer mistakes. And if Arizona can get 2 wins out of that final 4, if they can win homecoming in the Teacup game and find a way to win 2 more games during the season, NAU, and whether it be a San Diego State or a UCLA or a Colorado, talking about a 4-win season, and I think most people would chalk that up as a successful first year for Jedd Fisch.
All right, so Jeff's going with 4. Shane, after seeing that last third of the schedule, it does seem a little bit more reasonable to start. How many wins are you giving Arizona in that sequence and then for the season?
I think it's hard to give Arizona a win in that final 4. The game against Wazoo was in Tucson. I'd probably pick the Wildcats, but like Jeff said, going into Pullman that time of year is kind of like going into Corvallis. It's just a tough place to play, especially for a team that's used to warmer weather at that time of year. It could be cold and rainy and snowy or all the above. So it's tough for me to pick any game that they're going to win there. But I am especially interested in the Territorial Cup game because I'm very curious to see how ASU's off-field issues affect its on-field performance, if at all. I think a lot of people are thinking that same way because on paper, I think ASU is a top 25 team, but they weren't ranked in the coaches poll. They barely squeaked in at number 25 of the AP poll. And I think a lot of people, both journalists and coaches, think maybe those off-field distractions could get in the way. You think back to Arizona's the men's basketball team's 2017-18 season, and I think it's impossible to say that the distractions from the FBI fallout didn't affect the team at least a little bit. And I think back also to what former ASU linebacker DJ Calhoun told me about the 2016 season that ASU had. When they started 5-1, lost their last 6 games. There was dissension on the coaching staff. There was basically off-field stuff that spilled into the field. And that led to ASU's 6-game losing streak to end the season, including that 56-35 upset against Arizona. That was their only Pac-12 win of the season, and still Arizona's last Territorial Cup victory. So are there going to be more revelations about what happened behind closed doors at ASU? Is that going to spill onto the field? Will that leave a big enough opening for admittedly an inferior Arizona team, which I'm sure Jedd Fisch will have ready for this game, to go into Tempe and possibly pull off the upset? Maybe that doesn't come close to happening. Maybe ASU goes on and wins 10 or 11 games. But I am thoroughly fascinated to see what happens in Tempe this season. And like Jeff said, the records often don't matter. there have been so many big upsets in 2011 in Tempe and 2016 in Tucson that have happened in this game. I know as of now, ASU would be heavily favored to win. I'm certainly not bold enough to pick Arizona to win that game, at least at this point. But I think come the end of the season, that game could end up being more competitive than it looks like right now.
So what would your final record be for Arizona right now? Jeff has them 4-8. What are you picking, Shane?
I guess that gives them 3. If I'm going to be optimistic about UCLA and Colorado, I could certainly see them, getting a homecoming win, with some emotion behind it against Cal. So I think 4 is probably the ceiling. If they had a dominant looking quarterback and we felt really good about whoever their starting quarterback was going to be, then I think maybe 4, maybe 5. But I think because Will Plummer's in the mix, Jordan McLeod is apparently the number 3 guy. We thought maybe he was going to be a great starting quarterback for them this season, and maybe he will end up being that. I just can't put him past 4. I'm going to go with 3, and if they get to 4, I'll be thrilled.
I was going to go with 3, but I also said one thing, and Jeff, you'd probably agree with me here. I'm going to go with 4-8 because I think Arizona's going to beat somebody that I'm not saying it's going to be Oregon, but they're going to beat somebody that we don't think they have a chance against. Right now, I would give them the advantage against NAU, against UCLA or Colorado. I'll say UCLA at home, and I'll say Cal. I'll say that they'll win those 3 games. But I think a Colorado, a San Diego State, maybe a Utah, where they could rise up. Maybe even ASU if ASU season goes to shambles. So I'm going to say 4-8 as well. And I think we can all agree that'd be a successful season, right, Jeff?
Yeah, and one thing I think that we weren't counting on, or that nobody was really counting on in the offseason when looking at Arizona, saying this is a 1-win football team, and and based on what we saw last year, everyone would accept that. One thing that I think is vastly different this year, though, this defense is going to be quite good. It's going to be surprisingly good. Don Brown, look, I told you guys, essentially the day that he was hired, that the moment he steps on campus, he becomes the best defensive coordinator that has ever been on that campus in the history of that football program. He knows how to win football games. He knows how to keep games close, and that's going to be key for Arizona. If they can just keep teams from running away from them, and based on what I've seen, the depth chart at linebacker, which we were also worried about, now there's a log jam at linebacker. We know that the safeties are extremely good. We have one dominant corner in Christian Roland Wallace and a mixture of other good corners that can play, but with vipers and with safeties that can roll into coverage and ways that you can design and scheme defenses, you can hide a third corner on the team essentially by multiple coverages and schemes and looks up front. And especially you can change everything by getting a pass rush. And I do think that the Wildcats are going to have a pass rush this year. So the defense is going to be the difference maker. I'm not counting on this offense. As many weapons as Arizona does have, whether it be in the backfield or at the wide receiver, they're very deep at wide receiver, very talented at running back. I think it's going to be the defense that keeps Arizona in games this year.
All right, Jeff, want to switch topics. It was fun talking about football, and we'll obviously talk more about it with you during the season. But a couple of non-football topics to talk about. The first is basketball has a couple of new assistant coaches. Steve Robinson, coming from North Carolina, was just announced on Tuesday. And then I believe it's Ricky Foyes, who was with the Suns. What can you tell us about those guys and their impact on Tommy Lloyd's staff?
I don't know much about Ricky Foyes or Foy. I don't know if it's pronounced. If they take the European Foy, that's how I've been pronouncing it. It sounds more fancy that way.
Like Patrick Waugh.
Yeah, like Patrick Waugh or Dubois. I don't know. I really don't know much about him. I have not had a chance to research anything. I haven't contacted my guy over at the Suns to really ask much about what they feel about Ricky. I know that he has a very, very firm grip on European recruiting. Which is going to be obviously helpful for Tommy and for Jack Murphy, who's also got a firm grip on the Euro scene. I am super excited. Last night when it was announced that Steve Robinson was going to be coming on as the assistant head coach, I didn't even think he was available. I remember when Roy Williams retired, they named Hubert Davis the head coach. And when they didn't retain Steve Robinson, I was looking at like the Tar Heel fans, blog site or whatever. They were beside themselves, as was the entire Tar Heel Nation, that he didn't retain Steve Robinson, because Steve was with Roy for 26 seasons. He went to 7 Final Fours. They won 3 national championships. He was Roy's right-hand man. And I remember dealing with Roy during the Final Four when it was here in Glendale, and Steve was right there with him. And Steve is a guy that the players all looked up to. He was like he was kind of like the favorite coach of all the players, basically. Like all the players love Steve Robinson, and he's been around quite some time. He's 63 years old, but the guy has got an incredible resume, specifically with just being with winning teams and a winning program. And Roy Williams is one of the most respected names in college basketball history. And I just feel like when they named him as the assistant coach yesterday, I stopped myself. I'm like, I can't believe he was available. I really couldn't believe that he didn't catch on somewhere. So huge get for Tommy Lloyd and for Arizona basketball.
Yeah, as much as I love Jason Terry, I can't be mad about Steve Robinson taking his place for sure. Last question, Jeff, and appreciate you joining us. I know you got to head out here soon. Pac-12 announced that it's going to have a baseball tournament, Pac-12 tournament at the end of next season. It's going to be held at Scottsdale Stadium, where you've called some spring training games for the San Francisco Giants. I think it's a great move. I think it's another opportunity for the Pac-12 to be in the spotlight and put some more positive wins on their resume, just like in the men's and women's basketball tournaments. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great move, obviously, to move the tournament, to have the tournament there set up in Scottsdale. It puts you in a great media market. It's going to allow more eyeballs on the Pac-12, and who knows how the new alliance is going to affect college baseball as well. It's certainly something that could have an effect on the landscape of college baseball. So, look, it's exciting. Arizona, we were talking about this on Saturday night, just how different things are on campus right now, specifically in the athletic department, with all the new coaches and the new all the new ideas that are floating out there. The marketing department is just completely flooded with things, because new coaches come in, they want to implement new things. They're like, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we advertise our team? Basically, it's been a whirlwind for them, and I think having these changes that are positive changes that can be made, decisions that are made for you, essentially, can keep those types of decisions from out of your hands. I think it's always a good thing. So Chip Hale going to be moving into a good situation there at Arizona baseball, and I'm glad to have it. It'll be nice to have it here in the Valley. It's going to be hot as hell, but it'll be nice to have it here.
And one last question from me, and Jeff, as always, as Shane said, thanks for coming on with us and spending our podcast this week with us for the entirety. The alliance that was formed between the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12, to me, seems rather worthless. It's a handshake deal. I just don't see the benefit for Arizona outside of a few maybe non-conference basketball games, which might be, Arizona Duke, Arizona Michigan, Ohio State, something like that, Michigan State. Where's the advantage here for the Wildcats specifically in this alliance?
Well, we're going to wait to see what the new layout looks like, right? I've said on my show, and if I were sitting in that room, and George Kliavkoff has never asked me, and he never will, but if I were sitting in that room, I would say that you don't move the needle by scheduling Arizona and Illinois. You're not going to get the eyeballs on that game that are required to lift up everybody in the conference. What you need to do is you need to schedule Arizona versus Clemson, Arizona Virginia Tech, Arizona Ohio State, Arizona Michigan, because 5 million people will watch that game regardless of who Ohio State plays. They're watching that game. 300,000 people would watch Arizona, Illinois. But if you have Oregon, Illinois, you have 5 million people watching that game. And we want to see the marquee matchups when it matters in the playoff. We want to see Oregon, Ohio State for a chance to go play in the championship game, not in September. So I think it's important that the alliance schedule things that way once they do allow some scheduling for football, because Arizona, all these Pac-12 teams, they need to either decrease the conference games down to 8 to open up another week for non-con games, or wait till 2033 to start scheduling these games. Look, I'm very high on the alliance. Actually, I think it's a great idea. And there is one facet of the entire alliance that, if they're somehow able to pull this off, they will be able to go toe-to-toe with the SEC. And I don't mean in football or basketball or anything like that. I'm not talking about on the playing field. I'm talking about when you go into a negotiating situation with television and network officials and guys that are going to be spending billions of dollars on your product. If you can convince Notre Dame to come out of hiding and get into a conference and be a part of the alliance, you've now added upwards of 9 million eyeballs on any football game you put on TV. You've got the third most valuable commodity in all of college sports with Notre Dame football. You would have Ohio State, which is number one, and Notre Dame, which is number 3. And that levels the playing field. That then gives Alliance not only just a puncher's chance, it gives them an upper hand over the SEC when going to the negotiating table. And what would have been a negotiationless process for the SEC and for ESPN as it pertains to the college football playoff. So this is all a good thing. This alliance allows for these conferences to have more votes in the room when it comes to blocking the SEC from the impending monopoly that was going to happen a month ago.
Shane, do you agree with what Jeff said, or are you more skeptical like I am when it comes to this alliance?
I don't know what to think. I feel like it's kind of a big nothing burger at this point. I think I need to hear more. We're working on partnerships with certain things down the road. I tried to find the meat in it. The only thing that really struck me as of interest at this point was the idea that they would look at the Pac-12 specifically, would look at reducing its conference schedule from 9 games to 8 games down the road in order to add another possible Big Ten or ACC opponent.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting. And one thing I want to point out about this alliance real fast, it would be a lot of fun to see Arizona, North Carolina, and Arizona Duke home and home series in basketball. Jeff, I know you would really look forward to that at McHale Center. Well, thank you both for a fun conversation. Jeff Dean hosted the Jeff Dean Show on ESPN 1490 Tucson, as well as the Wildcats Public Address Voice. For joining us for the entire show today. Want to thank our friends at All AZ Sports for all that they're doing, and we have some exciting things coming along here on Wildcat Country starting next week, so we're really looking forward to that. For Jeff Dean and Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening, and as always, bear down.
Bear down.